Well, thanks everyone for joining. And my name is Jeff O'Keefe. I'm the executive director of Zen Peacemakers. And as you, I'm sure know, this is part of our four-part series called Core Trainings. And these are the very most basic Zen Peacemakers practices and approaches that we feel like, are really essential to what it is that we do. We have a 2-year training program. It's quite a commitment. We meet every Friday for 2 years, and it's really in depth. We wanted something that was a lot more accessible for people, free, no requirements beforehand, and that we repeat, and people can attend the classes as often as they like. So we do this one on meditation. We do one on conflict practice. We do one on the 3 tenets, and we do one on our somewhat unique unique approach to peacemaking. So sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already. It's free, comes out once a week, and it'll give you a heads up about these as they come up. And you're welcome to attend as many times as you like. So I'm going to turn this over to my good friend and Dharma sister, Gakyo, and let her take over the section. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Jeff. Hi, welcome everybody. Could I just get an idea about what kind of experience each of you have with meditation, if you have a regular practice and what it is, and maybe where you are, and if there's anything in particular you'd like to get out of the session today, so I can dial this in a little more specifically to this group. And you could just mic up and unmute.
I'll go first. I don't really have much of an experience with it at all. I've been introduced to this group by a friend that I was just like a spark in my life. He kind of sat down next to the table and he just had something about him anyway. So it intrigued me. I've toyed with it over the years. It's just, but I'm a beginner, I'd say.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad you're here, Marcia. Anyone else?
Yes,
Eileen?
I'm Eileen. I have had sort of an up and down fluid formal practice, maybe for about 20, 25 years. But beginner's mind always. And this is one of the first times I'm connecting with your group. I have been drawn to the Zen Peacemakers for a long time. And I decided I'm just going to enter at the time that entering is possible and see and experience. And I'm grateful.
Good to have you.
I'll share. My name is Mary Remington, and I have been with a contemplative practice probably since 2007. And I pretty much have a daily practice of 15 to 30 minutes a day. I'm a chaplain, and I also oversee the Buddhist chaplaincy training program for Upaya Institute and Zen Center. And Bernie was Roshi Joan Halifax's dear last teacher. So I have a real affinity for this community, and just grateful to be here with an open mind.
I'm glad to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, then I like to continue. I'm Antje. I'm from Germany. I actually have a little meditation experience, but not really a regular meditation experience. So I got the newsletter from Zen Peacemaker quite, I guess, a couple of years. So, and now I guess I have the feeling maybe I joined so lately, so maybe time is right. So yeah.
Thank you.
I can go next. So I'm Alan. I'm dialing in from Indonesia, and I get to know meditation, the word meditation, I think since pandemic, when it's like everyone has to be home, and I came to know it first. I don't know if it's a very different tradition from the Hay House. It's more like guided meditation, and since then I sort of like hop on to different kind of practices and get to know the Heart and Mind Institute, and that's where I get to know about this Zen practices, and I'm just very curious and want to learn more. So thank you for making this space.
Thank you for joining us from so far away.
Good morning. This is Bruce, or Tyson in the Sangha. I'm in Erie, Colorado, and I do hang out with a couple of these characters at Eon Zen in Boulder. But I've been kind of a Dharma junkie for a long time, been in meditation for probably 40 years, and had a bookcase like Jeff in the background. But I just got back 2 weeks ago from a 7-day sesshin at Dai Bosatsu Monastery in the Catskills. And I just continue to drop in and hang out. So here I am, and I'm enjoying Zen Peacemakers too. Thank you.
Welcome back from New York. I
Thank
grew
you.
up about 20 minutes from there. So to find something that might support a new person entering practice and be useful for people that have been practicing for a longer time is always a little tricky, but let's see how we can do. So we begin this practice. I like to work this kind of on 3 levels, and looking at what we're doing with our body, and then our breath, and then our mind. And the body is it's an interesting thing, especially for people seated at desks for Zoom, to find a good position, because you usually have a somewhat comfortable desk chair. But if you could find a way to sit where you're not leaning back against the back of the chair, and you're supporting the weight of your body through your hips and your bottom. If you're in a chair, you'll have your feet flat on the ground if they can reach. And if they do not reach, thank you for demoing, Jeff. Maybe putting a book or something on the floor in front of you that your feet can rest on. And once you landed, I like to think of us as being a tripod, with our bottom being one leg and either our 2 feet or our 2 knees if we're seated on a cushion, distributing the weight of our body and holding us in a pretty stable manner. And the next piece is tilting your hips slightly forward, as if your whole pelvic bone was a bowl and you were gonna dump some food out of it onto a tabletop. And this little forward tilt in your pelvis allows your spine to create its most natural curve. So when we have the natural curve to our spine, rather than slouching backward or sitting very upright and stiff, it keeps our ribs off our lungs, which allows us to breathe really deeply. And this is a practice where we're going to be noticing our breath. So the more freely we're able to breathe, the better everything functions. Our attention, the blood flow through our organs, everything works best if you're upright and self-supporting. That little tilt in your pelvis for the S curve in your spine. And you might just take a couple of breaths in this position, and then slouch backwards and take a couple of breaths. And just notice the difference in your capacity for breathing in an upright position compared to a leaning position. And there's a huge difference in how much more air we can pull through our lungs if we're upright and self-supporting rather than leaning against the back of a chair or a wall. And just take a couple of seconds and just notice the physical sensation of the breath moving into you. And we're going to talk about breath a little bit more, but it's not something we pay much attention to, so I'm going to redirect us to it a couple of times. Not the fact that we are breathing, but instead the actual noticing of the details of the sensation of what it's like for each breath. So going upward in our body, we're going to look at our chest cavity and shoulders next. And if you pull your shoulders up toward your ears, and then rather than dropping them straight down, imagine you're pushing your shoulders outward to create an openness across your sternum, but without the rigidity of that kind of shoulder soldier stance and stiffness. So outward rather than just pressing down. And there's a kind of a softness to it. Our arms, we're going to let your arms just drop naturally to the sides, and only moving from your elbows outward, leave your elbows where they are and bring your lower arms and hands together to rest in front of you at the center and dropping down into your lap. And this should be a natural position that's not pulling you too far forwards or pushing you backward if you let your elbows stay in place. Our hands, we use something called the Cosmic Mudra, which is this position. And we take our dominant hand, if we're left-handed like me, left hand on the bottom. If you're right-handed, the opposite. Let the other hand rest on top of it and bring your thumbs to gently meet at the center, and then let that position just sit on your lap. This position is the Cosmic Mudra, and there's all kinds of different hands positions that go with all the different thousands of types of meditation. And this one is designed to create a sensation of wakefulness. And there's also like almost a little meter built into it of your wakefulness. If we're really tired, our thumbs tend to drop down. If we're really tense, we're pushing them against each other. So you can gauge how your body's doing and your mental state by what your thumbs are doing as you're sitting. And you could use it to help bring your attention back to kind of resetting yourself for a relaxed and wakeful meditation period. And those words relaxed and wakeful are not things we think of together very often, but that's what we aspire to with this practice. So we're kind of up to here as far as the body part of instructions. And the next parts are a little more internal and a little trickier to find, but we take the tip of our tongue and we let it rest on the upper palate, right where the gums and the upper front teeth meet. And this does a couple of things. It completes an energetic circuit within the body, and it also helps control saliva in the mouth a little bit so you're not slurping and swallowing through your sitting period. We're going to let our eyes remain slightly open during this practice, which is different than a lot of other forms of meditation where our eyes are closed. But this helps us stay a little more awake, a little more engaged with the environment that we're in rather than shutting ourselves apart from it. And again, this is a meditation practice that rather than trying to change the state you're in, it's being in touch with where and how you are in this moment. So it's not elevating you into a transcendence, but it's a very down-to-earth, practical, here and now, as you are in the moment practice. So the eyes look toward the horizon and then just drop slightly as they would naturally without closing them. So you're probably looking, depending on the height of where you're sitting, someplace between 3 and 6 feet in front of you. Imagining you would be if you weren't looking at a screen anyway. And if you do notice during your practice, if your eyes start closing, just reminding yourself to bring them open just a tiny bit to take in a little bit of visual information. We're not looking, we're not seeking or searching, but we're kind of passively allowing a soft focus that allows little visual information to come in rather than you going and trying to stare at or study something. And it's a delicate balance, the same way the alert and wakefulness and relaxed is a delicate balance. The having your eyes open and passively seeing without looking is something unusual and not often found in a lot of meditation practices, but it's how we do Zazen, which is the practice we're working with today. So just to kind of review what's going on with your body before we move on, your ears are over your shoulders are over your hips, your arms relaxed in your lap with your hands in the Cosmic Mudra. That slight tilt forward in your pelvis that allows a natural curve in your spine. And balancing the weight of your body between your rear end and your feet if you're in a chair, and your knees if you're sitting on the floor. And I won't go into specifics of leg postures for sitting meditation because I'm thinking that you're all probably sitting in chairs. So the next thing we do, working from body, is to look at breath. And we want this to be a natural breath. It's not super controlled. We don't have to breathe slowly. We don't have to breathe particularly deeply. But what we do want to do is pay attention to the breath. And as I said before, we're paying attention to the actual, in the moment, real time physical sensations that you're experiencing of the breath, rather than just noticing the fact that you are indeed breathing. And we like to breathe deeply into the belly rather than up into the chest cavity to begin, and allowing your belly to fill on the inhale. And you'll feel the air moving upward through your lungs from the bottom toward the top. And when we exhale, it's going to be the opposite, allowing air to release from the top of the lungs and then down into the belly. And if you'd like, you could do a slight tightening of the abdominal muscles at the end of your exhale to make sure that you're releasing all of the air from the lungs and allowing a full container of new air to come in with each breath. So just taking a couple of breaths, doing what's called diaphragmatic breathing. And you're using the diaphragm at the base of the lungs to do this. Breathing into your belly on the inhale. And exhaling from the top of your lungs down to the bottom until you empty the air. Just taking a couple of breaths like that. And since it's not how most of us breathe, it might feel a little unfamiliar. You might find yourself getting a little bit dizzy, and that's fine. You're in a chair, you're not going anywhere. You're not going to fall down. And as we're starting to notice our breath and find the rhythm of this diaphragmatic breathing that suits you, we're going to start noticing fine details within each breath. Noticing the air coming in through your nostrils, maybe if the temperature of the room is slightly different than the temperature in your body, noticing the warmth or the coolness, noticing that air hit the back of your throat, make its way down your windpipe, noticing the physical sensations of the air filling your lungs. You might notice your ribs expanding to the sides. You might notice that it expands and contracts your arm position a little bit as you accordion in and out, or bellows. If your lower back is against the seat of a chair, you might notice your back body making contact with something on the exterior. You might notice your chest rise and fall, or your sternum moving forwards and back. And there's thousands of minuscule details that you could bring your attention to following your breath. And just kind of get the feel for it for a couple of breaths. While we breathe all the time without paying attention to it, we find that there's a lot of things that can grab our awareness as we are choosing to place our attention intentionally on the breath in the present moment. And you'll start noticing one breath is longer or shorter, that the distance between inhales and exhales might shift. And this is all just data to notice, but not get too excited about. Not too curious, just notice. Kind of as if you were an explorer that landed in a new place you've never been before, and you're just seeing what's there. So the next place we go after breath is mind and what we're doing with our mind. And we've already touched into this a little bit by intentionally bringing our attention to the breath as it is in the present moment. And with this practice, we are repeatedly returning our attention home to ourselves, to our breath. And what tends to happen is when we place our attention on our breath, it stays there for a few minutes. And then you hear a sound outside and wonder what it is. Or you think about something you're going to do later in the day. Or you realize you forgot to tell somebody something when you spoke to them earlier. And all of these are the natural generations of thoughts that occur in conscious, alive, awake human beings. There's nothing wrong with any of these thoughts. There's nothing bad about having thoughts, but they're just not what we're choosing to place our attention on for the period of time that we're meditating. So what we do is we sit down, we connect with our physical position, we connect with our breath, we start placing our attention on our breath, and then as soon as a thought arises, a sensation makes itself obvious to you through your senses, you notice that it occurred, you let it go, you let it be there, you don't need to engage with it, it doesn't need your help, and you allow yourself to return your attention back home to the breath, back to your body, back to this present moment. And then another thought occurs, another sound grabs your attention, another thought arises. You notice that it happens, and you recommit to your practice. You return your attention to yourself, to your breath again. And don't worry about the thoughts for the moment. It might seem like the most brilliant thought you ever had occurred, but if it's that important, it'll come back another time, and you don't need to deal with it right now. All these thoughts will be there the rest of your day for you to mix with and entertain and be informed by. But for the period of time that we'll be sitting together, all you need to do is notice that you had the thought, notice that you heard the sound, saw the sight, felt the touch of something, and leave that and come back to your breath. And this is just a practice of reconnecting to that physical sensation of being in your body and breathing, and not letting anything else take your attention away from it. So it's a very gentle training that we're offering ourselves, as if you were training a puppy. You drift off, you just bring yourself back without commentary or narrative or judgment, without thinking more, without making your thoughts make more thoughts for you. And the less you entertain your thoughts, the fewer generate themselves, and you find yourself in a place where you're better able to connect with your breath for longer periods of time. So at this time, I'm going to start a formal meditation period, and we'll sit for about 15 minutes, and then we'll have a little time after that for any observations or questions or discussion that you'd like to engage with. I'm going to begin the meditation period with 3 chimes of a bell, and at the end of the sitting period, I will ring the bell 2 times. So you don't need to worry about how long you've been sitting, and that's a really easy thought and preoccupation to get pulled in by. But each time any thought arises, just let it go, bring yourself back to the breath. I'll take care of the time for you. There's nothing else you need to do but sit here and breathe and be aware, be awake. Thank you for participating, everyone. I'd like to begin by asking the people newer to meditation what they were noticing and what that was like.
That's me. Um, When I noticed I was uncomfortable during parts of it, I was thinking through what I should be doing instead to get more comfortable. I noticed I was also trying to breathe correctly, like what I heard. I'm a kind of rule follower, so those thoughts were interfering with me breathing, actually. Yeah, but as I went further, I like just got into a breathing pattern. It was easier to just let that be. I wasn't criticizing myself about that. That's about it.
There's strange things that happen with the breath when it's different than we're used to, and it's really common to almost feel like you're not sure if you're going to be able to breathe the next breath because it almost feels out of order. I don't think anyone's ever suffocated doing this, but there's definitely, even for me, if I haven't done this for a while, there's almost a panic moment of, I forgot how to breathe. And then your body kind of learns the new pattern and relaxes into it. And as far as the busyness of thoughts, there's a tool that we often use in Zazen, especially when you're starting out, when there are a lot of thoughts arising, and there's usually a like, holy crap, I had no idea my mind was this busy, until you were intentionally noticing your mind. That happens. And one way to help keep track of where you are and what you're doing, and that you are intending to not get too sucked in and entertained by your thoughts, is we count our breaths. And we count from 1 to 10. There's nothing sacred or particularly special about the number 10. It's just a way to keep track of where we are in our attention and in time. So we would inhale, and for the length of the exhale, we would silently count the number 1 for the first breath to ourselves as we exhale. So if I were narrating what it sounded like in my head doing this, it would be for the inhale, and then 1 the whole time you're exhaling. It doesn't sound very nice. And then you inhale again, and you count the number 2 for the full length of the exhale. And you keep doing this up to number 10. And number 10 is just so you remember to start again. And you don't just go off into dreamland counting to 70. So we count our exhales from 1 to 10. And what we do is, as soon as we're doing this and we're grooving and we get up to number 3 and we start wondering, what's for lunch? Did I do such and such? Did I put gas in the car? Is the coffee maker still on? Do I like my life? Any of the thoughts that are arising, you notice that you had the thought, you go back to the breath, and you go back to number 1 again, not as a punishment, but as a reward almost for remembering that you're intending to be paying attention to and counting your breaths and sitting in meditation rather than just generating thoughts as we normally do. So we would count with our breaths to whatever number we get to, and anytime there's a disruption, anything that pulls our attention away from the body and the breath breathing, we notice it, we go back to the breath, and we go back to number 1 again, giving us a fresh start over and over and over again. And if you sit for a 20-minute meditation period and never get past number 4 because you keep getting distracted and keep starting over again, that's a fantastic meditation period. The times that you can recognize you're not paying attention to what you're doing is when you're trying to do this practice and you find yourself at number 15 or number 30 and completely forgot to start over again at number 10. So these are ways not to find out if you're good at meditating or not, but just help you meditate while you're meditating. Does anyone else have a question that arose or an observation? Whatever you're wondering or thinking is probably relevant to at least half the other people here, so please feel free to speak up. Eileen, please share.
What I was aware of is that I very rarely keep my eyes a bit open during meditation. There have been practices when I did that, but that was probably the primary awareness for me, that it was something very different. And I didn't fight it when my eyes closed naturally, but I was aware of that and I opened them a little bit again. So it was probably called my meditation practice, closing and opening the eyes. That it was a good awareness and yeah, just a good awareness of that I felt very different with my eyes open and my eyes closed.
There are thousands of kinds of meditation, and they all have different body positions, including the eyes. Almost all of them are done with eyes closed. So this is something that really sets Zazen apart and is the most difficult thing in the beginning for a lot of people to work with. Some meditations' intention is to bring you into a more internalized state, and Zazen operates a little bit differently because while we are having an internal experience, we're also aware that we're part of the room, part of a group of people, or part of the space that we're in. So the eyes open help us stay a little in touch with that. The bigger thing is it helps us stay a little more awake. It's easier to drift off toward a sleepy state if your eyes are closed. And if you're a very visual person like I am, I'm an artist, we start almost creating movies on the back of our closed eyes. And the visual stimulation that's spontaneous and self-created can be as distracting as the train of thoughts or the noise in a busy environment can be. So it keeps us in touch in bigger ways. But what you experienced is really a big challenge in this practice for a lot of people. So I'm glad you said that. Does anyone else have something they'd like to share or ask?
Well, I guess I can share a little bit. What's emerging for me during the meditation. This is by the way, first time I meditate with eyes open also. I noticed the position actually very helpful because I found actually I almost drifted off, but the position helped me. And that actually very helpful. And somehow I felt the position feels kinder to my spine. It helps my spine really feel supported in a way. And also when I open my eyes, I sort of like fix my gaze, not so intently, but just finding something to fix on and just fall on my mouse pad, which happens to be at the middle. And I think somehow it's sort of like my awareness of the patterns sort of deepened. Like I noticed things that I did not notice ever in that thing. So that's sort of like happening.
Thank you. Those are really good observations to make. The piece with the spine is every body is slightly different, and how each of our bodies feel from day to day and hour to hour is very different. So there might be slight adjustments that you'd make in your positioning each time you sit down on a cushion, and finding where your center of balance is that day. And nice ways to work with that is when we first sit down, to help your spine find its center of gravity so you're balanced in place rather than using muscles and strength to hold yourself in place, which can get really uncomfortable really quickly, is you could sit down, and once you find your seat position, tilt a little bit side to side and make each arc a little smaller and a little smaller, kind of like a pendulum, until it finds its center point. And that's going to be your body's center of gravity. And the same thing kind of works rocking front to back, and make each arc a little bit smaller until you're not even perceptively moving. And that's going to be your balance point for that day. And depending on how active you were, or how tight your muscles are, or how much walking you've done, it's going to be a little different from day to day. So doing a little something, you could also be circular motions like a pendulum, and letting the circles get smaller and smaller and smaller to help you find a position. All of those are going to let your spine be relaxed and balanced and not use tension to hold it in place, which is what makes things start being painful. The other thing is, if you're halfway into a sitting period and something starts hurting, just realigning that tilt in your pelvis can usually help your spine find its center and allow whatever's tensing to start relaxing. So if I'm in a long retreat where we do a lot of sitting and something starts to hurt, the first thing I do is make sure I still have that little curve in the small of my back from tilting my pelvis forward. And then everything, whether it's my upper thigh muscles and buttocks, or if it's my shoulders and neck, seems to relax once the pelvis is back where it needs to be for this practice. The other piece is about eyes and focus. And the background that you have on your Zoom screen is a perfect example of how we can either allow a soft focus, which is the kind of blurrier lavender flowers, or if we bring our attention and our focus onto a particular flower like you have on yours, it shows both what our optic nerve is doing, and that we can either focus like that or soften our gaze. And if you find strain in your eyes and difficulty with your eyes, sometimes it might be that you're working very hard to focus on a particular point. And one way to relieve that and learn how to allow your eyes to see without choosing to focus is that little trick you do as a kid about your peripheral vision, where you put your thumbs in front of you and you start moving them out to the side to see how far your peripheral vision can pick up where your thumbs are. If you try that, and after you've gotten to the point where your thumbs are pretty far apart but you can still see them, you'll notice you're still actually seeing in front of you. It's just not where you're focusing. And that's the kind of soft focus that we want to bring to our gaze while we're sitting. But again, it takes practice and it takes training. Every aspect of meditation does. But the more we train ourselves to bring our attention to the present moment without judgment, which is what we're doing in meditation and also in any mindfulness practice, it's something that's really useful in everything we do when we get up from our chair or cushion and go about whatever it is we do in our lives, whether it's driving somewhere or gardening or washing dishes or having a conversation with somebody. Learning how to keep your attention where you want it to be in a clear way brings the best of what we have to offer to what we're doing. So the more we practice meditation, the more we're training ourselves to do this in all areas of our lives. So I'm very grateful when anyone tries doing this, because I think it makes our interactions with each other and with our world clearer and more awake. And what more can we do than bring that to what we do? So is there anyone else with anything else they'd like to say before we close for... Oh, Jeff, I just see, if you bring your attention to the chat, Jeff has posted the weekday meditation practice for Zen Peacemaker, and this is something anybody could join. And if you want to say more about the group and where people are zooming in from, and
Yeah, Monday through Friday morning, and I say morning because I'm in the US, but so this is US Mountain Time, so 1600 hours in Germany. Ellen, I don't know Singapore, but maybe 9 p.m., something like that. And we sit for 30 minutes, Monday through Friday. And there's, and at the end, we do a very, very short chant. This is a group of people that have been sitting together, doing meditation together since we first heard about COVID. So over 4 years. And but the group is open to everybody. Would love to have you join if you like. Some people come once a week, some people come every day. So if you want to save that link, there's the Zoom link there. Just copy that onto a note or something like that, and join us if you like. Yeah, that's all. Thanks, Kakyo. Shall we wrap up? We're at the end of our time, unless there's any, last comment or question. Thank you, everybody, for staying together, and feel free to come to this as many times as you want. We do this particular class 3, maybe 4 times a year, and then we do the other 3 also 3 or 4 times a year. So we hope it's a useful format for you. So thank you all. Have a good day. Stay safe. Stay calm.
bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.